At a luxury hotel, a black woman dressed simply walked in like any other guest. She was quickly met with contempt, insulted, and asked to leave by security, solely because of the color of her skin. One phone call was made and the entire hotel was about to face a storm. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. It began with rain, Atlanta's heavy-handed kind where every drop hits sideways and the whole world turns to liquid neon. That night, Aisha Monroe sat alone in a rusted Honda, engine off, hands still gripping the steering wheel long after she'd parked. She stared at the glowing hotel sign just yards away, the letters gleaming like a dare through the downpour. She had tried to check in not 10 minutes earlier, but the receptionist never even looked her in the eye. "We need a card on file, ma'am." "No exceptions," the woman had said, her tone as cold and pre-packaged as the bottled water in the lobby fridge. Aisha had $68 in cash, crumpled bills tucked into the back pocket of her jeans. No card, no backup, no room. The hotel clerk didn't flinch, didn't soften. It was policy. End of story. So now she was here, back in the car, shivering, soaked, the smell of damp upholstery curling up from the seats. Outside, the rain continued. Inside, the air felt thinner with every passing minute. No one noticed the young woman parked alone under the dim streetlight. No one ever did. She was 24 then, jobless, homeless, and one long breath away from giving up. But that night, something shifted. Not outside. Not in the world. Inside her, sitting in that front seat, Aisha made herself a promise. One day, she told herself, she would own a hotel so beautiful, so welcoming, that no one, no matter their shoes, their wallet, their past, would ever be made to feel like she just had. It was the kind of vow that doesn't scream or pound its chest. It whispers, and it roots deep. 12 years later, Aisha Monroe was no longer the girl in the parking lot. She was the founder and CEO of Vista Palms Hospitality, a chain of luxury hotels stretching across 5 states. Her face had appeared on the cover of Forbes Women, her company had been profiled on 60 Minutes, and her inbox held speaking invitations from every major business summit in the country. She had built an empire, one reservation, one renovation, one relentless night at a time. But success had brought with it a strange haze. People smiled faster now. They hurried to open doors she was perfectly capable of opening herself. They cleaned more furiously before she arrived, spoke more politely when she was near. Every interaction felt curated, artificial, and Aisha didn't trust artificial. She wanted to know what her hotels felt like when no one knew she was watching. She wanted truth, not polish. So last Tuesday she booked a room online under a different name. No assistant, no fanfare. She wore a gray sweater, jeans, and carried a worn leather bag with frayed stitching. To the outside world, she could have been any woman on a business trip just passing through. At 4:18 p.m., she stepped through the revolving doors of Vista Palms downtown, the company's flagship property, her crown jewel. The lobby was immaculate. Cream-colored marble floors gleamed under the late afternoon sun. The soft scent of lavender and bergamot drifted through the air, just as she designed it. A pianist played near the bar, his fingers moving lazily across the keys. Guests lounged in high-backed chairs with glasses of wine. It all looked perfect. But Aisha wasn't here for the look. She was here for the feeling. She approached the front desk. The woman behind it, Lauren, according to her name tag, was busy typing. She didn't glance up. Not right away. When she finally did, her eyes flicked quickly over Aisha, hair, bag, shoes, and something in her face subtly cooled. A pause, then the practiced smile. "Checking in?" she asked, though it didn't sound like a question. Aisha gave the reservation name she had booked under. Lauren entered it without a word. The tension hung in the air, not loud, but unmistakable. The kind of tension born not from chaos, but quiet judgment. She asked for a credit card and ID. Aisha handed both over. There was no welcome to Vista Palms, no let me know if you need anything. Just a transaction, cold and clipped. At that moment, a man in a tailored navy suit stepped in behind Aisha. Lauren's demeanor transformed. Her shoulders straightened, voice brightened. "Mr. Cross, welcome back," she said warmly. Aisha turned slightly to watch the exchange. The difference was sharp, jarring, but not unfamiliar. The man received a smile. She received silence. She stepped back, letting Lauren finish. From the corner of her eye she noticed a security guard. Kevin, if she remembered correctly, watching her from near the elevators. His posture shifted slightly as she moved, nothing aggressive, just alert. The shift wasn't in the decor. The hotel looked exactly as she had intended. The shift was in the people, their choices, their assumptions, their subtle cues, and it told her more than a dozen performance reports ever could. She didn't feel angry yet. She felt something colder, something that hadn't visited her in years. Recognition. It wasn't déjà vu. It was a mirror, one held up by strangers, in a space she had created. Aisha Monroe didn't come to Vista Palms that day to cause a scene. She came to ask a question, silently, internally. Had the culture she built stayed true to the dream that was born in the front seat of a beat-up Honda? And what she was about to find out would shake her to her core. But what she experienced that day went beyond her worst nightmares. Aisha stood in the lobby of Vista Palms, wrapped in the golden glow of the chandelier overhead, but there was no warmth in the air. She wore a plain gray sweater, slightly oversized, and dark jeans that had seen better days. No makeup, no jewelry, no assistant trailing behind her. No telltale briefcase with a Vista Palms logo. Just a woman, alone, holding her own space, and that apparently was enough to make her suspicious. Gregory Moore, the general manager, came around the corner just as Lauren was finishing up with the man in the navy suit. He had that effortless kind of authority that people wore like cologne, visible without being spoken. His tie was sharp, his shoes louder than necessary, and his eyes immediately locked onto Aisha with a flicker of confusion. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He walked over slowly, each step deliberate. Then he gave her a long look, from the tips of her worn boots to the slight curl of her natural hair. It wasn't curiosity, it was doubt, the kind of doubt that says, "You clearly don't belong here. Is there something I can help you with?" He asked as if she'd wandered in from off the street. His voice was polite, but only by technicality. Aisha kept her tone even. "No thank you, just checking in. Are you sure you're at the right hotel?" Lauren's voice came from behind the desk again. Sharper this time, the edges of sarcasm creeping in like mold through drywall. "We get a lot of confusion with the courtyard down the street." Aisha turned to her slowly. "I'm sure," she replied. "I have a confirmed reservation." She handed Lauren the booking confirmation, which the clerk took as though it might be counterfeit. The girl scanned the screen, her lips tightening. Gregory stepped closer. "May I see your ID again, please?" he asked. Aisha obliged, calm but observant. Her face betrayed nothing, but her eyes scanned every detail. Gregory's sideways glances, Lauren's sigh, the slight motion of Kevin, the security guard, now making his third slow loop around the lobby, each pass bringing him closer to where Aisha stood. There was a strange energy in the room, subtle but undeniable. The lobby had grown quieter, as if people were starting to notice something was off. "We'll also need the card you used to make the reservation," Lauren said, her voice tight. Aisha handed it over. Lauren looked at it for a moment longer than necessary. She then passed it to Gregory, who studied it like it might explode. Without explanation, he walked toward the back office, card in hand. Aisha's eyebrows lifted, but she said nothing. Kevin, now less than 10 feet away, shifted his stance. One hand rested casually on his belt. The other hung stiff at his side. He wasn't watching the lobby, he was watching her. The tension was now visible, palpable. Aisha turned slightly to scan the room. A young couple sitting near the bar paused their conversation, glancing in her direction. A man on his phone by the elevators shifted his weight, eyebrows furrowed. Something about the moment, something unspoken, was bleeding out into the air. When Gregory returned, his expression had changed. His smile had hardened. "I'm afraid we're having trouble verifying your card. For security reasons, we'll have to hold it at the desk until we can run it again." "I wasn't told anything about that policy," Aisha said calmly. "It's our discretion," he replied, his voice clipped. "Company policy allows management to determine security procedure in certain situations." "What situations?" she asked. "Situations where we can't confirm identity or intent." He held her gaze, and for a split second, the mask slipped. He wasn't protecting the hotel. He was protecting his prejudice. We also reserve the right to refuse service, he added. To anyone. The words hung in the air like smoke from a lit match. Is there a problem with my reservation? Aisha asked. There could be, Gregory said, his voice now leaning into condescension. I just think it's best if you come back with additional verification. Kevin stepped forward, just enough to make his presence feel heavier. Miss, we're going to have to ask you to step aside. The words were gentle. The tone was not. Aisha looked around. More eyes were on her now. Two young women sitting by the window had stopped mid-sip. A man with a silver beard put down his newspaper. The pianist had paused between pieces, his fingers hovering. Something was shifting. Lauren's eyes met Aisha's again, only now there was no pretense left. No smile, just disdain. You should really know which places are appropriate for you, she muttered under her breath. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. Aisha took one quiet breath. Her posture did not change. Her tone remained soft, but her eyes were steel. Are you asking me to leave? Gregory gave a tight smile. We're asking you to cooperate with our process, or exit the property. We have other guests to consider. Understood, Aisha said. Then she turned, calmly, without a word of protest, and walked toward the door. Kevin followed 2 paces behind, close but not touching her. The distance was just enough to say we're watching you, but not enough to draw an official complaint. The lobby was still now. Uneasy, silent except for the hum of the ceiling vents, and the quiet tapping of a phone being held upright by one of the women by the window. She was recording. So was the man by the elevator. In the far corner, near the concierge desk, a young employee watched with her lips pressed tightly together. Elena. She looked no older than 22, her blazer slightly too big for her frame, her hands nervously tugging at the hem. Her eyes followed Aisha, then flicked to Kevin, then back to Gregory. Something in her expression said she had seen this before, and she didn't like it. Aisha reached the revolving doors and paused just long enough to glance back. Her face betrayed no emotion, but her silence spoke volumes. Then quietly, with the same poise she had walked in with, she stepped out into the street. Gregory turned to Lauren, and muttered something about entitled people. Lauren smirked and nodded. Kevin remained at the doorway, arms folded. Elena didn't move. Her eyes were still on the door, and in that moment, Aisha reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and made the call. She brought it to her ear, her voice steady, quiet, but certain. It's happening, she said. That's when she made the call that would change everything. Aisha stood on the sidewalk outside the Vista Palms, her breath slow, her gaze fixed on the spinning reflection of the hotel's name etched into the glass of the revolving door. She held her phone to her ear, and spoke just 5 words, steady and clear, her voice low enough to keep private, but sharp enough to cut through the chaos behind her. It's happening, she said. Then she hung up. Inside the lobby, Gregory was pacing now, muttering under his breath. Kevin had returned to the front desk, where he placed Aisha's credit card in a small black envelope and slid it into the locked drawer beneath the register. He then positioned himself near the entrance again, his arms folded tight across his chest as if ready to block her return. Lauren tapped rapidly on her keyboard, pretending to work, but her eyes were darting between the doors and her manager. She's still out there, Kevin said under his breath. She made a call. Gregory scoffed and rubbed his forehead. Of course she did. Probably some half-baked threat to make herself feel important. She said it like she meant it, Kevin replied, his voice edged with unease. Gregory's tone hardened. We've got policies, Kevin. If she wants to play games, we'll show her we're not here to entertain them. She's not a guest, she doesn't belong here. Period. The front doors spun slowly. Aisha stepped back inside. She didn't storm in. She didn't raise her voice or make a scene. She walked with the same calm deliberation that had unnerved Gregory from the beginning. But now there was something different in her eyes, something colder, more focused, a quiet authority that didn't ask for permission. I'd like my card back, she said evenly, standing at the desk. Gregory stepped in front of Lauren and faced her directly. Miss, he began, his smile now mechanical, forced. You've been asked to leave. I'm giving you one more opportunity to do that. before we involve the police, you're trespassing." She tilted her head slightly. "Is that how Vista Palms treats all their guests?" He leaned in, his voice lowered, sharp. "We treat people based on how they behave, and frankly your behavior is giving us every reason to question your intent here." "Interesting," she said, "because my intent is exactly what it's always been. To observe, to listen, and to make sure this place hasn't turned into the very thing I once swore it never would." Gregory rolled his eyes and raised his voice just enough to be heard by the growing number of guests nearby. "Look, if you don't leave now, I'll have Kevin escort you out and call the authorities. We take security seriously here, and frankly we don't need." He was cut off by a voice from behind the check-in counter. It was soft, but firm. "I don't think this is right," Elena said. She had stepped out from the concierge desk, her hands fidgeting with the sleeve of her blazer, but her voice carried enough weight to turn several heads. Gregory turned to her slowly, his jaw tightening. "Excuse me." Elena looked pale, but stood her ground. She didn't do anything wrong. She's been calm the entire time. "There's no policy that says we can take someone's card and lock it away without cause." A guest near the fireplace, an older woman in a navy coat, held up her phone and began recording. Another guest across the room whispered to a companion who had already been live streaming on social media. The air in the lobby shifted. The silence wasn't soft anymore, it was charged. Gregory's voice dropped to a hiss. "Elena, this isn't your call, step back." But she didn't. "I know who she is," Elena said. "I recognized her. I wasn't sure at first, but I know now." Gregory turned back to Aisha, laughing bitterly. "Oh, so this is the play. Get someone to say you're some big deal. That's cute. You've had your moment. Now I'm done." Aisha didn't blink. She looked directly at him, her posture relaxed, almost gentle, like someone addressing a child. Then she said the 6 words that froze every breath in the room. "This lobby belongs to me." For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. The pianist had stopped playing 20 minutes earlier, but now the silence was deafening. Kevin's arms slowly unfolded. Lauren's face twisted, confusion giving way to something closer to fear. Gregory blinked rapidly, then laughed out loud. A short, cutting sound. "You've got to be kidding me," he said, shaking his head. "Is this performance art?" But even as he said it, the front doors spun again, and in walked a woman in a crisp charcoal suit. She moved like someone used to leading boardrooms, confident but unhurried. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor. She carried a slim black folio, and a badge clipped to her blazer that read Vista Palms Operations, Executive Access. Nia Washington, Aisha's personal assistant, stepped forward and nodded once. "I believe you've been holding something that doesn't belong to you," she said, addressing Lauren. Gregory turned on her. "And who exactly are?" "She's with me," Aisha interrupted. "And she's here to clear things up." Nia opened the folio. Inside were 3 documents: the founding certificate of Vista Palms Hospitality Group, a notarized ownership ledger listing Aisha Monroe as majority stakeholder, and a current operations chart with her photo and title at the top, Founder and Chief Executive Officer. Gregory's eyes scanned the documents. Then his lips parted, but no sound came out. Around them the lobby transformed. The air was no longer tense, it was electric. Guests were standing now. Some had stopped pretending to record discreetly, and were openly filming. The couple near the window exchanged stunned glances. One of them whispered, "She owns it. She owns the whole thing." Kevin took a small step back. His face had gone pale. Lauren's fingers hovered uncertainly above her keyboard, then dropped into her lap. Elena stood frozen, her face a mix of vindication and disbelief. Gregory turned to Aisha, but she had already walked past him. She moved slowly, deliberately, toward the center of the lobby. Every head followed her, every phone stayed trained on her. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't gloat, she simply stood there, in the middle of the space she had built from the ground up, and looked around, not at the chandeliers, not at the marble, but at the people, the staff, the guests, the witnesses. There was no rage in her eyes, just clarity. And the weight of every injustice that had ever passed through a lobby like this one. But the real shock was just beginning. The lobby of Vista Palms had gone silent except for the quiet, tense clicking of phone cameras capturing every second. Gregory stood still, his face blank, his mouth slightly open as if some part of him still believed this was a cruel, elaborate prank. But the look in Aisha Monroe's eyes told him it wasn't. It had never been. Then the front desk phone rang. Lauren, pale and visibly shaking, glanced at it, but didn't move. Nia stepped forward and answered instead. Vista Palms, downtown. Yes, she's here. One moment. She turned, handed the receiver to Aisha, and whispered, "It's Carla." Aisha took the phone without hesitation. Her voice was composed. "Carla. Yes, I'm standing in the lobby now." A brief pause followed. "I'd appreciate it if you could join us on speaker, please." She held the receiver slightly outward, her thumb resting lightly near the base. From the handset came the clear voice of Carla Bennett, Director of Human Resources for Vista Palms Hospitality Group. Her tone was formal, direct, but there was a trace of quiet fury beneath her professionalism. "This is Carla Bennett," she began. "I have just reviewed security footage, staff behavior reports, and incident logs dating back 6 months regarding this property. This call is being recorded and will be part of our legal documentation process." The room froze. Carla continued. "To all current guests and witnesses present, I am confirming that the individual currently being escorted, interrogated, and disrespected in this lobby, Miss Aisha Monroe, is the sole founder and majority stakeholder of Vista Palms Hospitality. The behavior she has experienced today is not only unacceptable, it is in direct violation of our stated policies, ethics standards, and corporate code." A few people in the crowd gasped quietly, others nodded, murmuring. The man near the fireplace lowered his phone slowly, his expression torn between awe and indignation. Across the room, someone whispered, "She owns everything." Carla's voice sharpened. "Effective immediately, Gregory Moore, general manager of this property, is hereby terminated. Lauren Fields, front desk associate, and Kevin Sloan, security lead, are also terminated with cause. You are instructed to leave the premises without engaging further with staff or guests." Gregory took a step back. "You can't be serious, Carla." You've ignored 6 formal complaints in less than 90 days, Carla cut in coldly. "You've suppressed 2 guest reports involving racially targeted incidents, including one as recent as last week. You falsified follow-up logs and deleted internal comments. We have proof." Lauren turned pale, her eyes darting wildly between Aisha and Gregory. I didn't know." "You signed the acknowledgement form, Lauren," Carla said. "Your badge has been deactivated. Please leave immediately." Kevin remained motionless, his jaw tight, his hands clenched slowly, then released. Finally he gave Aisha one long look, somewhere between shame and defiance, then walked away without a word. Gregory followed behind, shoulders hunched, the weight of exposed truth pushing each step lower than the last. Lauren hesitated, glancing back as if someone might still come to her defense, but there was no one left on her side. The doors closed behind them, and for a moment it was as if the entire lobby exhaled. Then the applause began. Not loud, not wild, but real. A slow rising ripple of clapping from guests scattered across the room. A middle-aged couple near the window stood and clapped. The man who had live-streamed nodded silently as he continued to record. Even the bartender raised his hand and tapped the counter gently, a quiet sign of approval. Aisha didn't smile, she didn't bask, she simply turned toward Elena, who stood by the concierge desk, frozen and wide-eyed. "You spoke up when it counted," Aisha said softly. Elena straightened, nervous, unsure what to do. I didn't think it was right. I wasn't trying to." Aisha held up her hand, stopping her. "You listened to your gut. That's rare, and it matters more than you know." Nia stepped closer and whispered, "You want me to put in the call for promotion paperwork?" Aisha nodded once, without hesitation. "Today." Elena's eyes welled, and she covered her mouth with one hand. Her voice cracked. "Thank you, you earned it," Aisha replied. "Let that be the beginning of something better." The room had transformed completely. What was once cold and performative now pulsed with something honest, human. Guests approached one by one, offering brief words of support, apologies, even thanks. A young black woman near the elevator simply nodded and said, "Thank you for standing up." An older man in a beige blazer, his voice gravelly with age, placed a hand over his heart and said, "It needed to happen. I'm sorry it had to happen like this." But Aisha didn't come here for applause or apologies. She came for clarity. She stood now in the center of it all, the weight of history and ownership resting squarely on her shoulders. She didn't feel vindicated. She felt responsible. The system had failed, inside a space she had built, and though justice had arrived, it hadn't erased the damage. Nia leaned in and asked quietly, "Do you want me to clear the floor, shut things down for the day?" Aisha shook her head. "No, this isn't a crime scene. It's still a hotel. We move forward, not backward." She looked around once more. Her voice, when it came, was calm but resolute. "I didn't come here to tear anything down," she said. "I came to rebuild. That's what leadership is. Not punishing people, not proving points. It's creating something better after truth breaks through." There was no cheering after that. No dramatic music, no swelling soundtrack, just stillness, and the soft understanding that something real had just happened in a place built to look pristine. Outside, traffic moved on as if nothing extraordinary had occurred, but inside, the guests would remember. The staff would remember. And Elena, now standing taller than she had all day, would never forget. Aisha walked toward the private elevator, the one only corporate executives could access, and paused with her hand on the panel. She didn't look back. Her voice remained quiet, but it echoed in every corner of that marble floor. But this story isn't just about one hotel or one day. Aisha stood alone in the boardroom on the top floor of Vista Palms, just past midnight. The lobby below had returned to normal, or something close to it, but the energy in that space would never quite be the same. She looked out through the tall glass windows where the city of Atlanta shimmered beneath her, alive with headlights and rooftop lights, and the occasional flash of red from a passing ambulance. The city didn't know what had happened hours ago, not yet, but it would. The internet would see to that. The story was already spreading, clips on TikTok, articles being drafted, hashtags taking form. But for Aisha, the real story wasn't in the footage, it was in the silence that had come before it. She sat down at the edge of the polished table, resting her hands lightly on the surface, palms open, relaxed. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark wood, older than the woman who once sat in a car in the rain, but sharper now, and steadier. She closed her eyes for a moment, and breathed in the stillness. Then she began to speak, not to the room, but to the camera. Nia had quietly set up across from her. A live stream, no scripts, no teleprompter, just her voice, and the truth it carried. "I know what some of you are thinking," she said gently. "You saw a woman walk into a hotel, and get treated like she didn't belong, and then you found out that woman owned the building." She paused, letting the weight of that sentence settle. But here's the part that matters more than the twist. It shouldn't take ownership to deserve respect. It shouldn't take power to be treated like a human being. Her eyes didn't leave the lens. She wasn't performing, she was offering something real. "When I was 24, I spent a night sleeping in my car outside a hotel that wouldn't let me in. Not because I was dangerous, not because I was disruptive, but because I didn't have the right kind of card or the right kind of look. That night broke something in me, but it also planted something." She let the silence stretch. Somewhere in the building below, a door clicked softly closed. The city moved, unaware. "I promised myself I'd build something better, and I did. But here's the hardest truth I've had to swallow in years. I let myself believe that building the structure was enough. I thought if I created the brand, the vision, the values, that the rest would follow. But what happened today reminded me that culture isn't built from the top floor. It's built in lobbies, at desks, between strangers who make choices in real time." Her voice softened, but there was no weakness in it. "If I hadn't walked in that door today, without a name badge or a designer bag, if I hadn't stayed quiet long enough to let them show me who they were, nothing would have changed. And that scares me more than anything." Aisha leaned forward slightly. Her hands remained still, but her expression carried the full weight of a woman who had seen both sides, powerless and powerful. We have to stop pretending that discrimination lives only in loud places. It's quiet most of the time. It shows up in glances, in hesitations, in assumptions about who's supposed to be here. And it happens every single day, to people without cameras, without titles, without proof. She looked down for a moment, then back into the camera. Don't wait to be the victim before you speak. Don't wait to have an audience before you act. If you see something that feels wrong, say something. Record it, share it, and if you're in a position to help, don't hesitate. Her voice caught slightly, not from pain, but from resolve. I've been silent before, out of fear, out of exhaustion, out of not wanting to be labeled angry or difficult. But silence never protects you. It only protects the system that benefits from your silence. She stood up slowly and walked toward the windows, the camera capturing her from behind now, silhouetted against the soft light of the city skyline. I will keep fighting, not because I enjoy confrontation, not because I want revenge, but because I was once that girl in the car, and because now I have a voice, and I intend to use it. She turned back toward the camera one last time. The lights above her cast a soft halo on the frame, her expression clear but unreadable, as if she were holding back 1,000 things she could say but choosing only one. If it had been you standing in that lobby, she asked, what would you have done? She left the question there, hanging, not for drama, but for truth. As the live stream ended, the chat continued to flood with messages. Some were angry, some were grateful, many were filled with stories, strangers sharing moments when they too had been pushed to the margins. A man in Milwaukee, a nurse in Phoenix, a student in Baton Rouge, people who had never met Aisha, but who now saw themselves in her story. In the hallway, Naya leaned against the doorframe, quietly wiping the corners of her eyes. Elena, still in her concierge uniform, stood next to her, silent, watching, taking it all in. The fight wasn't over, it never really was, but something had shifted, not just in that hotel, not just in Aisha, but in the people who were watching, listening, learning. They wouldn't all take action, but some would, and that was enough for now. As Aisha turned off the lights in the boardroom and stepped out into the dark hallway, she carried with her no vengeance, no bitterness, only purpose. Hope walked with her, because tonight had proven one thing beyond all doubt. One voice, when used well, can change everything.